Perfect. Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of Beyond Belief, where we're talking about the other side. I'm Kjarlune Ray, Clairvoyant, with my co-host Bonnie Worth, who's medium. And the question that we were answering today, sorry, Bonnie, I'm just going to share this really quick and then I'll hand it over to you. We started to answer this in our last video, but I wanted us to talk a little more in-depthly about it. And this part of the question is probably a stupid question, but no, not that one, sorry. Some I also miss dearly and have regrets when they were here on earth, and I'm trying to repair that with them spiritually. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we talked about some steps that they could do to make themselves feel better, but I'd really love it if we could talk about what the truth is behind all of that versus what we think the truth is behind all
absolutely,
of that.
Absolutely. And it goes back to absolutely. And I love that we get to talk about this a little bit more, because I know I had mentioned earlier in the video, I said, if you could just believe it's already been done, because it has been, which means that when we die, we leave our ego behind. And so the individual on the other side is not holding any of that anymore. There's nothing that, right? They may come forward, and it happens often where they'll come forward in a reading and they might want to offer an apology to someone that there's something, but they don't need to do that for themselves. There's nothing that needs to be reconciled. It's not for them. It's for you. So this comes down to your ability to hear. This is about 100%. You reconciling it inside of yourself. They're fine. They're okay. You might have regret. They're not holding any of that against you. That ceases to exist for them. And the only person you need to reconcile it with is yourself. Just yourself.
See, and I think this is so, and I'm just going to use my dad as an example, because everybody knows that my dad recently passed on, and I share that with, because I don't have a lot of people. I don't lose a lot of people in my life. I'm one of those very lucky people that have not had to actually attend a lot of funerals, right? I am very lucky. I understand that. My children were almost adults before I even lost my grandparents, right? Like I'm very blessed, very lucky. I understand that. So I use my dad as a reference because that sort of makes it easier for me to explain to people. And this is a part of why it makes it so much easier for me to communicate with him too. Okay. Is that I understand that the second he died, it was Ken Weaver. My father died. Okay. My father is not who is sitting out there. Right. One of the soul that was my dad, one of his lifetimes, if many, I don't know, but this last lifetime, he was my father. Mm-hmm. On the other side, he is every life that he has experienced, and every fraction. He is every memory of what he has experienced as a soul, which is a lot bigger than just my dad's life. Mm-hmm. Right? And that may sound crazy to people, but it makes it so much easier for me to actually communicate with him, because I don't refer to him as the experiences that we all shared together. Right? There's so much more about him, the conscious side of our being. So the part of our brains that that process everything dies. That's not what goes with us. What goes with us is the lessons we've actually learned in our curriculum, right? So in the universe, we're just a lot of experiences, if that makes any sense. And not all of our experiences are my dad. Some of them, he was other things. He was other people. He was other experiences. So it makes it so much easier for me, because it helps me understand that he's so much bigger on the other side than just my father. Right. And so because of that, his experience with me was a blip. Now I'm still very attached to that experience, but he's holding on to every experience in every life that he's lived, right? So for him, it's just a blip. He doesn't require my apologies or my processing, or that doesn't even exist in his realm. And when he shares them with me, and he shares them based on what he picks up on our struggles. They're not his struggles that he's talking to me about. When I channel to my mom or my sister, or when he's sending me messages, they're not about his struggles. He's not struggling. Right. He's around all the time. He's not missing the ability to be able to communicate with us. He communicates all the time with us and every other being he's ever attached to in every life he's ever lived. So when he sends those messages, they're because that's what we're hurting from. That's what we're struggling with. He's sending us help, not the other way around. He doesn't need our help.
Right. He doesn't. Right? They don't. And
he doesn't need our help.
And so I've had this conversation, with different mediums at different times, and when we look at it, we look at anything in terms of our healing. We look at where we do heal. We need to heal the things that
Yeah,
come up for us in this lifetime. Our healing does continue on the other side. So
of course.
so the spirit, when they cross over, there is healing that needs to be done, but healing
Yeah.
from not from our ego point of view of healing, but from
No.
that soul's experience, the
Yeah.
healing through their death experience, the healing through
Yeah.
the many facets of what their experiences were within
Yeah.
life and relationships. But that is done at such a level that it's processed so quickly,
Yes.
and they're not held in terms of needing to correct anything here on earth.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad, I think, and I know it's going to sound crazy because I'm a visual person, right? So when I see things in life, whether it be movies or TV shows or whatever, I gain connections to them if there's a similarity, if something about it makes sense to me. So I'm just sharing that with
Yeah.
you so everybody can understand. There's a TV show out there called Being Erica, way old, was an awesome show. In it, there's all these doors that she can pick and choose from. Okay, she can choose experience and go back and relive experiences and do things with these doors, right? The reason I'm sharing that is because the way that my father showed me that processing, that healing that you're talking about,
Mhm.
is windows of his experience. So he showed me
Right.
walking down a hall and he's stopping and re-watching these experiences, the things that he still needs to heal from. And what he
Yeah.
showed me in this process, and I've talked about it in other videos, but what he showed me with you, but what he showed me in this process was that um, it was that he didn't quite follow his curriculum
Right.
to the letter in each one of those videos. So that's what he was. Okay, so I got this and I got this, and that needs to go back into my database because I have to experience that, right? It's like
Yeah.
he was processing. So it
Right.
wasn't, I love the term
I
healing, and I'm sure that it
I
was.
would say I love the processing of it. I think that is a
Mm,
really good way of saying it. They're processing. I think that's a great way. We do healing here as with our
yeah,
because we have emotions as human
yeah,
beings. We have to do
yeah, because
healing.
they don't
They
have
do
emotion.
processing. Right. That's a
Yeah,
great way of putting it. Yeah.
yeah. So he showed me that, and you know, I guess the easiest way, because again, I see things like they're movies, right? So
Yeah.
I guess the easiest way I could describe it to people, what it's like on the other side is you're on summer holidays. So you're on summer holidays and you get to be on vacation, but you got to take that one class in order to keep your credits up. So it's like one class a summer and you only have to go once a week, right? That's how he shows, like, so he shows me he's going through this hallway of windows, this hallway of review, he's processing, and then he gets to
Mhm.
take a break and he just gets to go, B, and then he's got to go back to the hallway, and then he gets to B, and then he goes back to the hallway, and he sort of goes through all of that till he's ready to come back over to this side and then picks his curriculum again, right? So it's not something that they do all at once, and I could be wrong, but what he shows me is that they don't do it all at once. I used to think they did. I used to think that's why I couldn't connect with them when they first crossed over.
Yeah.
But he's showing me going back to them. So unless he's showing me tidbits of things he's already experienced, just that I can understand, which is possible, it feels like he goes back there, but it's for short bursts. And
They
then,
do they do go into what is referred to as a sleeping state, which means that
right.
their energy is unavailable, so to speak, and they're
Okay. Yeah.
unavailable because they're processing their death experience. And so that can be not only do they process their life experience, they process
Yeah.
their death experience. And so they
So, which
process
are two separate things, right?
two
Sorry. I'm
separate
not trying to
things.
interrupt you,
So
baby,
they
but
go
two
so
separate.
they go into a sleeping state, and in that sleeping state they are unavailable. But as they're processing their death experience, guess what? We are too. We're processing
Right.
the so we're both doing that same thing. I think what people to understand is that the physical and non-physical world exist at the same time. They're existing
Yes.
simultaneously. And what we experience
And
here in
other layers.
physical, they go through that in non-physical. And so when we look
Yes.
at their processing of their death, so are we. And so that's where they become unavailable. They go into what's referred to often as a sleeping state, but that's what
Yeah.
they're
Or a
doing.
morning state.
Or a morning state. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they'll go
That
into
makes
that,
total sense.
right? Then they become available. And in fact, I actually love connecting with spirit. And it sounds like it sounds so weird to say. Well, it's not. I mean, I get to talk to dead people. But I actually love being able to give them like 3 months. 3 months for them to go into it, because what happens is it's a complete shift of frequency and energy. And I actually find it easier to communicate with them once they've not only gone through their death process, but once they've started their processing of their life review, because then there's some of the things that would
Yeah.
otherwise have created some of the clog in the filter that are no
Yeah.
longer in the way, and it becomes easier for me to receive from the other
Yeah.
side. The other piece of it is also in honoring the grieving process for the person going through the death as well.
See, now normally when I pick up on them on the other side, and I've said this to clients for years, it's normally it would have to be a few months after they've crossed over. Like they would have to be in an awfully intense position to be able to communicate with me shortly after they've crossed over. And well, honestly, Bonnie, I always used to think that that was because of a limitation that I had in my
Hmm.
belief system of being able to communicate with the other side.
Right.
But what I'm hearing is that that's actually just where they're the easiest to connect with.
Hmm.
So question for you. I'm going to ask you this.
Yep.
Sorry, hold that thought for a second because I got a question for you because you're the medium, so you'll understand this better, right? My dad, literally within 3 days,
Hmm. Hmm.
had come through. So my question for you um, was a part of him needing to mourn his death. Like, is there any chance at all that a part of why that was so intense and so quick is because we weren't there when he got to cross over and only mom does and he needed to go through the process? No?
Not at all. So to understand that they don't need to mourn the death like what we need to, like some spirit, there are exceptions where they can be stuck to the earth plane, and that's a whole different
Yeah,
conversation for another day. But in terms of your dad, what happens is that the vast majority of spirit cross over immediately, and they're
right.
reaching back, and they reach back to help through the initial stage of their loss. So they're coming in. They've
Okay.
got support, they're able to offer, and they're showing up really quick, and they're
So they're not
available.
processing yet.
They're
They're
not
not
processing
asleep yet.
yet. They're not processing yet. And then
Okay.
once they kind of go through the initial stage, then they go into their death processing. And once they
So is that why he's been quieter?
exactly, because he's in his death
Got it.
processing.
Got it.
Okay? So he's gonna
Oh,
go
that makes
into
so
that
much more
state,
sense because I was
and
like, wow,
then
am I just getting too comfy?
no, because then what happens, and so to understand when we look at vibration and energy, when they drop into their death processing, they go into a lower frequency. So here we are. So
Yeah.
imagine when we're in life, we're the same frequency. Someone dies, so they're going to go to
Yeah.
AKA heaven, which means they
Yeah.
shift in frequency. This is us, this
Yeah.
is them. When they go
Yeah.
into their death processing, they drop. So their
Right.
frequency, it's all energy. They don't go below us vibrationally, but it's a lower vibration. And so
Right.
they basically are
So it's quieter.
unavailable to us. It's quieter. They're in their
Right.
sleeping
But they
state.
can still communicate, correct?
They
It's just
still
more
can
like a
send
whisper.
love. They can send love.
Yes.
They can send little bits of messages. And that's why I like to give that 3 month window, because once they've processed, their frequency raises and we're without a lot of what would be the static that would otherwise be there. And it becomes easier to communicate. So it's not that they go through. And again, this is where there was not an argument, but I had another medium say to me one time, that they don't go through healing because they return to pure positive consciousness. And yes, they do. And
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
still this transition. They're making a transition. They have to understand again what it's like to not be in a physical body anymore.
Well, because it's like, I mean, if you picture, like, let's use logic for a second, because this is where I annoy a lot of people in our industry because I'm very logical in for
Yes.
what I do for a living. I'm exceptionally logical. People always look at me like, no, you're supposed to be like celestial. I'm like, I'm not
Mm,
at
no,
all.
no, wrong person.
Definitely not going to see me doing this around a crystal ball with a scarf on my head. That's not going to happen. But anyway,
Uh,
um, but if you look at it, right, because one of the things that I share with people is when you're coming to Earth, it's like being put in boarding school. Okay, so you're going to boarding school. You don't get to see your family. You get to communicate with them. You can have phone calls, just like the universe.
Right.
You don't get to spend time with them. Okay, and the only real difference between this boarding school and the boarding school that you might go to in like Cambridge, England, is that you don't get to come home for Christmas holidays, Thanksgiving, or Easter too. Like when you go home, you're
Right.
going home for summer holidays. But imagine, if you will, if you're looking at it from that perspective, if imagine spending a year, and in our case, for some of us, it's 80, 90 years, that's what we're used to, that those are called years. It doesn't exist in the universe. It was a blink in the eye of the universe. But to us, our experience, it was many, 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 many years, right? And then you're going back home. Like, you need some time to adjust to the new surroundings again. Like,
it's like moving anywhere. Like, you move to a new city, you've got to figure out the new city before you invite people to come over. You got to figure out where you live first before you send out invitations.
So picture deciding you're going to move back home to where you grew up, right? You know the town, but it's changed. Things have changed.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
You need some time to adjust.
So so what happens is they just drop in frequency. They just drop in energy. They're adjusting. That's it. They're processing their death experience and adjusting.
Can some of them take longer than others? I'm only asking because you do it for 3 months.
Yeah.
And I felt Dad intensely for like the first 3 months, and he's been gone 6-7 months now, and it's only been in the last month to a month and a half that I'm not feeling him as, I mean, I feel him,
So,
like there's moments
to understand, this is not a linear, this mediumship is not linear, right? And so there always are different variables and different things and experiences that can take place and happen. And I don't even proclaim that I know everything that there is to know.
No,
I can only
say,
and so within it, is it possible? The reason why I do the 3 month, and I want to go back to that, is one, I've given them a chance to go through some of their death processing. And then also when my clients are coming forward to me, this sounds harsh to say it this way, but they're ready to hear the message. Any sooner, a lot of times people are in shock and they don't want to hear that it was someone's time. They don't want the reasons. They just
100%.
Want their loved one back. And there's no healing in that. And so I look at mediumship as being the most healing modality. And so allowing for people to come in a readiness when they're in their grief, now they're ready, right? And that's when healing can happen. And so that becomes a more purposeful in doing this work for me by giving it. However, where spirit, it depends on the individual person. Again, how much, some spirits are stronger. Some people can bounce, basically they bounce really quick through things, where yes, other people can go through and be unavailable or in that lower vibrational state. Now, not in comparison to our vibration, but this vibration of heaven within the vibrational degrees, they're in that state because depending on what their life was about, if they were, if they were a murderer, if they were cruel, if they were whatever, it can take longer for those individuals to kind of move through it. But here's the clincher, is that they also have conscious choice on the other side, and they can stay in that state for as long as they feel that they want to be in that state until they make a choice and say, you know what, I'd actually like to not go through this anymore, and I'd like to choose something different. And now they get to choose a different experience. Doesn't that sound very similar to what we do here?
Well, it's just like if we want to call in sick from work and stay in bed, it's a choice. Right? Just because some people don't feel like they can make the choice doesn't mean it isn't still a choice. Right?
Exactly.
You still have options and choices no matter what side you're on.
Exactly.
That is brilliant. So I really hope. Do you got anything else you want to attach to that, sweetheart?
No, I think it's perfect. I think we've covered all of it. I think just to this person who wrote in this question, I just really, if you can be as kind and compassionate with yourself through this process, really let yourself off the hook. Know that you are already forgiven, and the only person you need to forgive is yourself.
You see, and I love that, because I think what your real focus should be is forgiving yourself for being human. We make such a vast mistake in our lives that we are so busy beating ourselves up, expecting more than we're capable of at the moments that we're capable of.
Yeah.
And like, to me, God's grace is forgiving myself for being human. Right? Doesn't mean that it doesn't affect people badly. It doesn't mean that I don't hurt people. It doesn't mean that I haven't made mistakes, because I absolutely have. But, unless you get the rule book before you participate, you're going to screw up and break some rules. Like, it's just, I think it's one of the reasons why I got such issues with governments, because they never delivered a damn rule book and they keep changing it. I'm like, Oh, like how do I not screw up? Right?
Right?
It's so important to understand that you just, like, with God's grace, you have to forgive yourself for being human. We get so stuck on,
Yeah.
when someone leaves, we realize we should have done something differently, or when a relationship ends, or you did the best you could with what you had at the moment that it transpired, and you just need to give yourself some damn
Exactly.
grace,
Exactly.
right?
Oh my gosh. Oh my
But
gosh. So
just
true.
just allow yourself to forgive yourself for being human.
For being human, exactly. And I think death is one of the greatest wake-up calls for us in terms of the choices we're making in our lives. And all you can do in honoring the person and the experiences to make better choices as you move forward, right?
Because you can't change
Because you
those
can't
choices,
change.
whether it's because
Exactly.
somebody's gone or because it was 2 minutes ago.
Yeah.
You cannot ever
Yeah.
change anything that has already happened. Nothing.
Yeah. Yes. But
It's
through the
not
grace, I
possible.
always I always for because I collect Catholics, I seem to do that in my line of work because I know former Catholic.
You
And so
collected me.
I collect them. I collect them
Accepted.
everywhere I go.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I always say to people is to understand that Jesus already died on the cross. We don't need to continue to crucify ourselves.
Right? It's one a total separate topic that we'll have one day, because I would
Another
love us to
topic.
have a conversation about
Yes.
religions for sure. Because
Yes.
it's one of those issues I have, right? I sit back and I'm all like,
I'm excited for
nah,
that
he
one.
did all that. That is not why he did all that, people. So yeah, so we hope this answered your guys' the
Yes.
question that came through. I hope it was helpful to other people that are watching. Remember, we're
Love
coming
it.
on every week. Always like and subscribe. You never know what we're going to talk about. We could be talking about our
Right.
stuff. We could be talking about your stuff. Always remember, if you have questions, please put them in.
Please.
We'll get to them as soon as we can. I promise we'll get to them.
Yes.
And we wish you all an absolutely amazing week. Love you from both of us. Mwah.
Mwah.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.